Did you know that there was a point in time where if a British court found you not guilty of murder, that was it? It didn't matter what turned up later, like a confession, a witness, or DNA, case closed. That changed in 2003 in England and Wales, with Scotland following shortly after, where an acquittal could be overturned if certain conditions were met. Now, why is that relevant? The case we're looking at today had 3 men stand trial for murder, and all 3 men walked free. Whatever you make of the verdict, the bit that should stick with you is that under how the law stands now, it means that that might not necessarily be the final word. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself here. A mother of 3 was shot dead in her own home in an attack so reckless that the men responsible set the house ablaze with her 2-year-old daughter and boyfriend still inside. 20 years later, no one has been convicted. What's worse is the man police say pulled the trigger has never set foot in a courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is William and this is the Baker Street Bureau. If tall tales of true crime and the outright unexplainable are your thing, you're in the right place. Now, without further gilding the lily, this is the story of Lucy Hargreaves and the never-ending quest for justice. Our story takes place on the north side of Liverpool, in a place called Walton. In many of my other stories, I've looked at a lot of countryside settings, but this is quite the opposite. Walton is made up of terraced streets and tight-knit communities. For what it's worth, it's also home to HMP Liverpool, a prison that's so heavily linked to the area that people just call it Walton Prison. Make of that bit of geography what you will. In the early 2000s, Walton, like a lot of Liverpool, was feeling the tail end of a really rough period. Unemployment was high, and pockets of the city were running rampant with crime. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and where feuding with the wrong family could haunt you for years. That's the world that Lucy Hargreaves and her family were living in on Lambon Avenue. Lucy was only 22 years old. She was a mother of 3. On the night that mattered, 2 of her children were away having a sleepover at their grandparents'. The youngest child was upstairs asleep with Lucy's partner, Gary Campbell. Now, I must stress before I go into more detail that this is an active case. Lucy's relatives are very much still campaigning for justice, so the line between fact and fiction, allegation and conviction are paper thin. In the early hours of August the 3rd, 2005, 3 masked men broke into the house on Lambon Avenue. Lucy had fallen asleep on the sofa after watching TV and was tucked up under a blanket. As the men rounded the corner into the living room, they opened fire with a sawn-off shotgun towards a sleeping Lucy. Depending on where you read, some say 2 shots and some say 3. A detail some might overlook, but to me the difference shifts the mood. A sawn-off shotgun typically has 2 rounds in the chamber, so pausing to reload before shooting again shifts the emotional weight from a break-in to something deeply personal. After firing, the attackers doused her cover in petrol and set the house alight. The gunshot woke up Gary, who was upstairs, and he said that he heard the men saying, "Where is he? Where is he?" The flames took control of the downstairs and it forced Gary to escape with their 2-year-old daughter through an upstairs window. Gary then ran back into the house knowing Lucy was still inside. He didn't make it in time. There are very few people in the world that can empathize with how Gary would have felt in that moment. We can only assume that at some point he asked himself the same question that Merseyside police had. Why? Here's where the story gets some motive, or at least the motive the prosecution eventually settled on. Back in 1993, when Gary Campbell was a teenager, a stolen car mounted the pavement at speed. A 4-year-old boy was killed. That boy's name was Kevin Downs. His older brother was a man called Tony Downs, a name you're going to hear me say a lot more. The court would later hear that Gary Campbell had been a passenger in that stolen car, something he always denied. This, again, is the prosecution's theory of the case. This is not established as fact. What we can assume with hearing "where is he" in the house and the knowledge of that earlier incident is that the men stormed the house looking for Gary. In the years that followed, Merseyside police worked through a mountain of witness statements, phone evidence, and the slow grinding process of trying to build a case against men who, by every account, moved in circles where nobody talks to the police. Now, this is a point I really need to emphasize. No one talks to the police. Put yourself in the position of someone that knows something. The chances are people either know that you know something or wouldn't find it difficult to work out that you did. The police weren't very good at anonymity, and the people who killed Lucy made such a powerful statement. They are serious criminals, and speaking out would almost definitely mean death. Police arrested 21 people in connection with Lucy's murder before narrowing their efforts down to 3 names. Tony Downs and Kirk Bradley stood trial for Lucy's murder. A third man, Adam McNally, stood alongside them, but on a charge of stealing the getaway car. Partway through the trial, the judge ruled that the evidence didn't hit the mark needed for a jury to even consider a conviction. And just like that, all those years of police work and uphill struggle, the men were acquitted. Under the law that I spoke about at the beginning of the video, that would normally be the end of the efforts for retrying them on these charges unless new and compelling evidence came up. Then, the Crown Prosecution Service and the Court of Appeal have to agree that it's enough to reopen it. Something that really took me back while researching this is finding out that one of the barristers on the defense team in that 2007 trial was a young lawyer named Robert Rinder. Yes, that Robert Rinder. The one who spent the 2010s as Britain's answer to Judge Judy, Judge Rinder. Nearly 20 years later, he made a documentary revisiting the case. In his own words, "It haunts me that there has been no justice for Lucy." Now, no ill feelings towards him as a defense barrister helping them get an acquittal. It's an incredibly important part of the legal system, ensuring that all parties are able to be seen, making sure that people don't go to prison willy-nilly. It must have been really tough being part of such a massive case so young and early on in his career, which to this day still hasn't seen a conclusion. Seeing the 3 men walk from court that day and very little being done about it after that point. But it wasn't just 3 men. There were allegedly 3 men who broke into that house. 2 of them stood trial for murder and the third an accessory. The whisper of another name found its way into the courtroom. The third man inside the house. The gunman. Kevin Parle. Kevin was already known to the police long before Lucy Hargreaves was killed. A year earlier in 2004, a 16-year-old boy named Liam Kelly was shot dead in Liverpool. Reports state that it was centered around a £200 debt. Kevin was arrested, bailed, and while he was out on bail for a shotgun murder, Lucy Hargreaves was killed with a shotgun. He allegedly fled the country before the 2007 trial even started. To this day, he's never been found. Kevin is 6'6", broadly built, and has ginger hair. A man that's not exactly built to blend into a crowd. Reported sightings started popping up all over the place. Spain, Australia, Dubai, to name a few, but none of them have ever been confirmed. He's been on the National Crime Agency's most wanted list for close to 20 years. 21 arrests, 3 trials across 2 murders, and the one person named as the triggerman in both has never stepped foot in a courtroom for either. The story doesn't stop there though. Tony Downs and Kirk Bradley didn't exactly go on to live quiet lives after their acquittal. Both men were later convicted of serious offences in separate unrelated cases and are currently serving life sentences. The pair were in custody on a number of charges around firearms, intent to endanger life, and criminal damage, to name a few. On the 18th of July 2011, whilst being transported from Her Majesty's Prison Manchester to Liverpool Crown Court, The prison van carrying the pair was ambushed. A vehicle forced the prison van to stop. Armed, masked men confronted the security staff. One gunman threatened to shoot the driver unless he handed over the keys. The pair escaped, and it immediately became national news. Investigators believed that they'd fled abroad, eventually establishing that they were hiding in the Netherlands. About 8 months later, thanks to a joint effort between Dutch and Merseyside police, they'd been caught. In their absence, though, the trial went ahead and both men were sentenced to 22 years minimum before becoming eligible for parole. Lucy's family have never stopped campaigning. There's an active push backed by a group called Justice for Lucy Hargreaves for Kevin Parle to be tried in his absence. Now, this isn't something that's standard practice in English law, but the family are arguing that it should be. A £10,000 reward from Crime Stoppers has sat unclaimed for years. And recently, the documentary I mentioned before brought the case back in front of a new audience. The documentary from the perspective of the man who once stood on the other side of the courtroom to Lucy's family. So where does that leave things? 2 men walked out of a courtroom in 2007, and as the law says, for now, the verdict stands. A 3rd man was never in that courtroom to begin with, and somewhere, for almost 21 years, Kevin Parle has been the answer to the question nobody's been able to finish asking. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is William, and this is the Baker Street Bureau. If tall tales of true crime and the outright unexplainable are your thing, you're in the right place. This story was a request from a viewer comment, and I have spent ages trying to find the comment so I can put it on the screen and thank you, but I can't remember where it was. I spent hours looking. Please make yourself known so I can say thank you. I remember what the comment said. You were telling me that you are from Liverpool. This really bad thing happened involving Lucy Hargreaves, but no one's really covered it that much. And you asked me to take a look at it. I can't find the screenshot to put it in the video. I will have another look whilst I'm editing this. And if I can find it, it will appear on the screen. I appreciate you choosing to spend your precious time with me today. If you're not up to anything, go and watch one of my other recent videos or one of my older ones. I've made quite a few now. We're building a bit of a back catalogue here. Very exciting to see the channel start to take some shape. But if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.